Why hello there Patreons! Audio optimization has not been completed yet for this new microphone, however, I believe the microphone quality sounds a little bit better than usual. So hopefully, you guys will enjoy this sneak peek of the Slanishy auditory perfection that we will come to achieve with time. Though I also am putting on a voice a little bit, but you know, hopefully, even without that fancy voice, even when I get excited or amused, the quality of the voice and the lower tones will be picked up and received quite well. There are a few problems. Namely, my breathing gets picked up too much for my liking at the moment, but it's all good. We're going to be working with the best hands around, and we're going to get perfect audio just for you guys. This is also limit testing, because I got a little bit of limited time at the moment. So I'm limit testing while casting. Sorry. Anyway, not sorry, but you know. We got Deimos going the Tech Marine versus Gordian of Renful playing the Chaos Lord. Chaos Lord is Gordian's main hero. I guess Tech Marine is technically Deimos' main hero, though he is a little bit more versatile than Gordian, I would say. Now, this is an interesting matchup because typically in the past, everyone would say Chaos Lord just shits on Tech Marine because he can overwhelm the Tech Marine with melee early on. But I feel like there's been a bit of a meta shift since that sort of sentiment has been going around. You've got Mines, you've got Bionics on Tech Marine, and then you've obviously got the power of Shotgun Sergeant Scouts, which, you know, they're really quite respected in the current meta. And all of those things the Chaos Lord can struggle to deal with, certainly in the early game prior to getting the Combi Bolter. But we'll see. Typically, the Chaos Lord would want to get a Combi Bolter as soon as possible. And actually, Raptors plus Noise Marines is a really nice combo in this matchup, because Noise Marines counter any heavy investment into Scouts, because they do nice AoE damage. The Bolters actually do okay damage against the light infantry models. But most importantly, the Noise Marine silence prevents the Scouts from using their grenades or shotgun blast. And then with Raptors, you just put the pressure on in melee, right? You suppress them, you tie them up in melee, then the Noise Marines can deal with any anti-melee coming out of the Scouts. It's a pretty good combo. Then you get the Combi Bolter of the Chaos Lord, so that he actually does significant damage, and you can't kite him anymore with the Scouts, or you're going to be bleeding models. And then, to further compound the advantages that the Chaos Lord has in this matchup, the Tech Marine, I mean, I was going to say he's generally considered the worst hero at the SM for supporting ASM. I mean, it's just a fact. The Tech Marine is the worst hero at supporting ASM out of all the Space Marine heroes. You don't have no heals, you don't have any damage buffs, you don't have any reliable sources of knockback, well, other than Bionics. So, ASM generally, they're not as powerful at dealing with enemy melee units as it would be if you were playing the Force Commander or the Apothecary. So we'll have to see how Deimos can pilot this. Right now, map control is pretty dominant for Gordian, and you would expect that because prior to getting any upgrades really onto the Scouts, it's going to be very challenging for Deimos. Really, what he wants to focus on doing is just obviously trying to maximize map control, but really the primary focus should be minimizing his own bleed and just trying to bleed the heretics, because they're the most vulnerable. They're the easiest tool that Gordian has right now for Deimos to bleed. So that's where Deimos' focus should be. Generally, the Chaos player is going to be requiring requisition more than he is power, and that is something that remains to be the case in Tier 2 as well for Chaos. So focusing on bleeding the Chaos player as much as possible is going to be super productive. Beautiful timing there with the shotgun blast, that was great. Literally got them last second, and there you go. You know, you've got several dead heretics here. They did get the generator, and ironically the 100 rec for the gen is actually more expensive than all those bled heretics. But what can you do? Not a lot really. It stalls, it gives Deimos time. There you go. We've got 7 more dead heretics over here. But the Raptors with the bolt pistols could very well start killing scout models. Looks like one of them does go down. We do have the scout sergeant coming out now. Could drop a point blank grenade. Raptors gonna eat it. No, they're not. Just gonna kill one model. No, they're not. Wow. Oh, the tech marine should. This guy's gotta die soon. I was gonna say, Jesus. He ate a grenade to the face. But he does die. And as expected, we see the combi bolter on the Chaos Lord. So the scouts have to get out of there. Tactical Marines now, along with the ASM, would be the best counter. At least they're not going to drop any models against the Chaos Lord. But yeah, map control, really brutal right now. The natural wreck here for Deimos has been decapped, as has the natural power here, and the natural VP. But he's doing an okay job in terms of bleed. If we look at the XP, that's another thing that can help the Space Marines here. Like I said, it's expected the other game is going to go towards Chaos, but as the game goes on, and it starts to scale, things start getting more favourable for Space Marines. Because Heretics don't scale very well, and because Space Marines tend to get more XP, and they scale so well with their levels. Scouts, both of them right now, around 50% of the way to Tier 2. ASM, barely any XP on them unfortunately, and Tactical Marines also about 50% of the way to Tier 2. You can see the comparison with the Chaos units is stark. What a stark contrast. Barely any XP so far on the Chaos units, and that will remain something that pretty much continues for all of the game. It's one of the biggest advantages that the Space Marines are going to have in the matchup. Tactical Marines here need to be pretty careful. Got very low. Raptors now can team up with the Heretics. Looks like the ASM will stay and try to get another model before they jump out, but actually it was not worth it at all for Deimos there, losing one of the models. A little bit unfortunate there with the staggered jump. There was potential for a second ASM model to have gone down, but I'm glad he didn't lose the second ASM because that was quite undeserved. And it's just bad, really, for Deimos to have lost one model there. Never mind losing two. Now, in terms of tech, we see that Gordian, in spite of what I said earlier, is actually floating Requisition and not Power with regards to his Tier 2. But that's because he didn't go for the Noise Marine build. Ooh, looking for a wipe here. Foot nade, but there is a Tech Marine retreat. No Bionics though, so the amount of melee DPS that is on offer here is pretty negligible. Does manage to kill one of the Raptor models, that's going to help. All this Requisition bleed. There's 8 dead Heretics here as well. All this Requisition bleed is going to stall Gordian. Gordian needs to make sure really that he's got... Okay, I was going to say that he has auto reinforce turned off so that he can start his Tier 2 as soon as possible and then start reinforcing his units. So Deimos is going to actually be getting to Tier 2 first. He is only 75 or so VPs down, so not a huge VP deficit really, and honestly, in terms of XP, he's way ahead, so I like this position from Deimos. He is behind on the VPs, but honestly, that is to be expected. And the thing is, it's not like he's behind on units. Both players only have 4 units. What would typically happen, I think, is you would also see the Noise Marines, and that would put a lot more pressure onto the Gen Farm. Noise Marines plus Chaos Lord under the Econ Worship can be a nightmare. And then Deimos would have to respond with some defensive Devastators, just using them to zone out the Noise Marines and to try and control the Chaos Lord. Probably with Vengeance rounds as well. But we've got a bit of a lighter Tier 1 from both players right now. Very brave jump there from the ASM. Bit of a cheeky grenade as well, throwing it in spite of the fact that those Heretics were closing in on these scouts, but a couple more kills there on the Heretics. Deimos really, I think, has been set back this game by the amount of ASM model losses he's taken. Another ASM model going down there. And he is going to be going for the Razorback, which will be quite effective. I do like the Razorback in the matchup. Though, against the Chaos Lord, it can be tricky because Plague Marines with the speed buff from the Chaos Lord can be a really good counter to the Razorback. The fact that Plague Marines snare like a las cannon without requiring any setup, it's pretty strong. Now normally that is not so effective because Plague Marines are so slow, but yeah, you play the Chaos Lord, you get +2 speed when you worship, suddenly that weakness of the Plague Marines is negated and they become a fantastic tool for all kinds of AV, but particularly the very squishy Razorback, which can't tie them up in melee. In particular, you've got a combo of the Plague Marines and their snare with the Raptors and their aspiring champion. You see him here with his Demonic Maul. This Demonic Maul doing heavy melee. It's a pretty brain-dead combo. Snare the enemy transport with your Plague Marines and then jump behind them with the Raptors, and it's no longer fast enough to run away from the Raptor Aspirant Champion, who can then crush it with his Demonic Maul. Brain dead, but hey, that's Chaos, right? It's just how Chaos play. But we're not going to see the Plague Marines, actually. We're going to be seeing the Chaos Dreadnought, which is slightly more unorthodox. Especially against a Tech Marine, who's not really renowned for their melee prowess. I guess there is the presence of ASM on the field, but honestly I don't feel like the ASM have done a huge amount. You could consider going for Khorne Marines if the ASM were something to be that concerned about. But regardless, he's not doing that. He's going for the Chaos Dreadnought, which will of course be basically immune to the ASM in melee, unlike the Plague Marines, which would be very vulnerable. The problem is, in all fairness, the Chaos Dreadnought... Oh, I was going to say the Chaos Dreadnought with its autocannon would be a lot less effective than Plague Marines plus Raptors actually killing a Razorback. But Gordian is committing a tremendous amount of resources. In fact, well over 100. I forgot what the base cost for the Chaos Dreadnought is actually. Is it 100 power or 110? I'm not sure. But anyway, he's going fully into the AV variant of the Chaos Dreadnought, the missile launcher Mark of Tzeentch Chaos Dreadnought. And this thing can basically stand and trade with enemy tanks, never mind enemy transports, but the primary problem is it doesn't snare, and it's slow. So, in theory, if Deimos uses his Razorback fairly effectively, keeping it behind enemy lines, then he should be pretty good. I'm assuming Malignant Blindness has gone down right now, which is why there's weirdness with the Fog of War. Oh, but Deimos kind of fucks up his micro. He actually lets the Dreadnought get a melee charge on it. We see Blessing of the Omnissiah has been activated, and what is going on over here? There is a glorious melee. The Raptors are still retaining free models, but the ASM are jumping in, and they're super low. Both parties are pretty low right now, but it looks like the ASM will retreat out of there. You've got double Aspirant Champions on them, and the Chaos Dreadnought is now in retreat. Did the Chaos Dreadnought get the Razorback? It did. Wow. This is now a terrible situation for Deimos. Now, where's the Raptors? The Raptors are just capping here. Oh my goodness. So the Tech Marine, it looks like, was going for the kill on the Raptors, and ended up losing his life due to it. So now Deimos is super far behind. He does have a last cannon out, so he has some sort of counter to the enemy Chaos Dreadnought, but generally his army is a fair bit weaker. He's down on units too, not having his hero right now. A good amount of damage there on the Chaos Dreadnought. That's going to take a little bit of time for the Heretics to repair, and this being the Mark of Tzeentch Dreadnought, honestly its field presence is not very high right now. Can't really hurt these infantry at ranged. Of course it could run up close and just force melee. That would be somewhat effective, but it remains to be seen. There was a fair bit of bleed put onto Gordian as well there. A little bit of Heretic bleed and a lot of Raptor bleed. Good play by Gordian here though. He's not wasting his Raptor jump. He's saving it so that if he needs to jump the last cannon, he can, and then once the last cannon is off the field, the Dreadnought can basically do whatever it wants. So right now, one would expect the Dreadnought wants to be walking down here and bashing the gens, because that is one of the other things that this Mark of Tzeentch Dreadnought can do really effectively. Gen bash. It's one of the best things you can do for your AV units in general when they have no vehicles to kill. Just send them after gens. They tend to kill gens disproportionately well. Bit of a whiff there on the kill the weak. Kind of poor timing. Just doing it reactively, instinctively, even though the scouts were nowhere nearby. Scouts here might be looking to get a retreat grenade, which is why I'm not actually surprised that Gordian wanted to jump away there to prevent that. And we are actually going to be seeing Mark of Khorne. I actually quite like this play. Right now, it seems like the spam of melee could be very effective actually against Deimos' composition. Deimos might want to consider getting some heavy bolted Devastators to try and mitigate this. At least the Raptors then would have to jump the Devastators, and then the las cannon's free to continue shooting. ASM here should probably take the fight against the heretics. Just merciless strike them to do a shitload of damage, bleed a few models, and then jump out. In fact, they don't have to because now they've got the scout squad coming, and you see both of the heretics need to retreat because the combination of merciless strike then into the shotgun blast, it's just, even if the heretics do somehow win that on RNG, you're not going to kill any ASM, they're just going to retreat and you're going to lose a good 10 plus models on your heretics. It's just not worth it. That's why I would have engaged regardless with the ASM, just to basically feed XP into my units and to weaken the enemy economy. Plasma Gun is now going to be coming out for the Tactical Space Marines. Note that they are level 3 right now. Scouts not achieving too much this game. This one not even level 2 yet. This one is doing a bit better, but still lagging behind the Tactical Space Marines and the Tech Marine. Do know, if you don't already know, that the hero units do actually level up faster than normal units, so the Tech Marine being level 3 doesn't actually mean that the Tech Marine has contributed more than the Tactical Space Marines. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Tactical Space Marines have gained a greater amount of XP. It takes a lot longer to get normal units to level 3 than it does heroes. Anyway, Raptors just wiped right in front of our eyes there. I honestly don't really know what Gordian was doing there. I guess both players are making their fair share of throws in this game, which is nice because it's going to give us quite a long and even game. And Last Cannon unfortunately just can't really get itself into a position where it's able to get any decent attacks onto the Chaos Dreadnought. I mean, there's just no hope of killing it. That said, the Chaos Dreadnought honestly not really contributing that much to the combat either itself. Now looking at the economy, it appears that Deimos has actually been the one who's bleeding more than Gordian Varenful at this point. In fact, Gordian has managed to somehow save up 400 requisition, which is going to be used to get himself a Bloodletter squad. I mean, those missile bursts there, they are meant to be doing damage over time, but it seems very, very minimal. I'm not 100% sure why the Dreadnought is just running away from the Tech Marine right now. It could literally just force melee onto him and stop him shooting. Man, if the Dreadnought got literally one attack there in retreat, that would have been a wiped Tech Marine. Maybe it was a bait. Maybe he was trying to pull him closer to then lower his HP, try and kill him in retreat. I'm not sure. I don't think so. But that would have been quite effective. Deimos, on the other hand, right now, economy looking pretty decent. Could technically go tier 3, but he is on the back foot. He's down on VPs. He seems to be somewhat struggling in engagements, but he's doing pretty well with his scouts, constantly capping up the sidelines. Scouts having that 6.5 speed and beautiful utility abilities with the grenades makes them one of the best side capping units in the entire game. I suspect Deimos right now is contemplating going tier 3 or getting a Dreadnought out. Now the Dreadnought's a really interesting play because there's only really one serious form of AV on the field at the moment for Gordian, and there is no snare, so technically the melee Dreadnought could just walk up and punch the Chaos Dreadnought with Mac of Zinch to death. This thing has 0 melee resist, so it would die extremely fast in melee. Absolutely no match in melee. And you already have a snare from the Thunder and Lightning, plus the Melter Gun on the Tech Marine as an additional source of anti-vehicle. So I think the matchup here will go very well for the melee Dreadnought. Gordian, upon seeing the melee Dreadnought, needs to get a snare, so he has the option of the Las Cannon Havoc team or the Plague Marines. Las Cannon Havoc team is a lot cheaper and technically does more DPS, but it's immobile, super vulnerable to the ASM, and also pretty damn vulnerable to the Tactical Marines as well, because the Havoc is way lower max HP than the Plague Marines, and the Havoc is heavy infantry, whereas the Plague Marines are actually light infantry, which means the Plague Marines will not take much damage at all from the Plasma Gun. Havocs will die very fast from the Plasma Gun. Really nice use of the Tech Marine here by Deimos. I would like to see him kitted out with a few more pieces of armor. I think the Signum armor right now could be quite beautiful. Drop it on Bloodletters, help melt them whilst they're out of worship. Drop it on the Dreadnought, help it get wiped. So the Cornmarines and Bloodletters are going to commit here. I'm a little bit concerned about the Bloodletters because they are in the retreat path of this Dreadnought. They need to phase out. Oh my god, they're just going to wipe straight away. What's going over here? We've got Heretics that are getting wiped as well. This is not good. I'm guessing the Dreadnought doesn't get out. Does Deimos commit the Dreadnought? Techmarine... Oh, Deimos does. That is such a huge mistake. All the Dreadnought had to do right there was disengage, and this would have been probably a GG for Deimos, but... I don't know why Deimos sent that Dreadnought in. It's got Blessing of the Omnissiah right now, which is helping it out tremendously, but I think it dies, yep, to the next strike. And the Techmarine also was staying in way too long there, trying to get in any additional melter gun shots that he was able to. 3 more shots would have killed it. I believe it does 100 damage per shot, if I'm not mistaken. So, going to be a melter bomb as well. That's not going to be enough. Oh, with the last cannon, though, it will. Yeah, dang. Dang. This game go on? How? How does this game go on? I mean, Gordian does have the VP lead, but he just lost so many squad. It was really quite outrageous. He lost the Raptors, he lost the Tzeentch Dread, he lost the Heretics over here, and all that Deimos lost was a single Dreadnought, which, yeah, honestly, felt like he didn't really need to lose that Dreadnought, but what can you do? What can you do? More bleed for the Chaos Army. I'm afraid I do not think the Chaos Army is going to be achieving tier 3 in this match. Once again, the Cornmarines 1v1, they'd be beating the ASM squad. They've got that power melee, they've got more maximum HP, but with the support of shotgun scouts, able to do the knockback on demand and that little bit of extra piercing DPS, it isn't going to be the case. Nice use of Drain Life here by the Chaos Lord. You see him focusing on the model there with the power sword, so you can tell it is a sergeant. Well, either that or the fact that he doesn't wear a helmet, because you know Warhammer, where the more elite officers just don't wear helmets for some reason. Trying to get the snipe on those leader models, I mean, it's a really good tactic to try and bleed your opponent. Not sure how effective the plasma guns have been. I guess they must have done fairly well. They're level 4. And you can see right now, doing some pretty crazy damage. Did they just kill... Yep, they just killed the aspirant champion. Hilarious. Hilarious. The most expensive model by far right there. Absolutely cooked. I mean, Gordian really needs to get some value out of this Chaos Dreadnought. Probably wants to be focusing a lot on the VPs. Hasn't got this VP at the moment, which is problematic. Where are the Heretics? They're down capping this side. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Map control is not very favourable for him right now. There's not really much you can do about it. We're going to get the classic 1-2, the Las Cannon Snare, plus the Melter Bomb Snare. Where's that Las Cannon? Oh, it's out of range. It's moving up. I don't think it's going to get it. If you get the double snare, it will literally immobilize that walker. Oh, it's in range right now. Is it? It is. Wow, just in range. It's got 14 HP. Malignant Blindness goes down. But it doesn't matter because the Las Cannon started the wind-up onto that target, so it will finish it. And indeed it does. It finishes off that Chaos Dreadnought. I think that is going to be the game, surely. Yeah, there's no AV on the field right now because the Tzeentch Dreadnought went down, but there is going to be a Loyalist Dreadnought en route, and I think that is going to be it. I really think that the Mark of Tzeentch Dreadnought there was a massive overcommitment. And I don't like ever relying on one source of AV to deal with a vehicle. I feel like against a good player, one source of AV is never really going to be enough. Even if you do kill the vehicle, it'll end up costing you so much that it's just not worth it. And even in this game, when the Mark of Tzeentch Dreadnought did get the kill on the Space Marine Loyalist Dreadnought, it was only because of a misplay from Deimos in the first place. So, you know, that shouldn't have happened. Why the Dreadnought turned around and walked up like that when it could have just walked back to base and got its repairs is slightly beyond me. Obviously a little bit of a micro lapse, but just think, even with that mistake, Deimos was able to come back there. I don't know, putting all your eggs in that basket of anti-vehicle just seems like a bad idea. The vehicles aren't the only threat right now. Tax, ASM, Tech Marine, they're just as big of a threat as the vehicles are. But there you go. Obviously, these kind of games mostly come down to micro. I think both of the builds that the players went with were pretty legitimate, and with better micro, either of them could have won. But there you go, classic matchup. Torpid's Tech Marine Mercenary Company strikes once again, and I hope you enjoyed this and the new microphone. Thank you for the support, folks. Torpid signing out.